Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we do return on the eve of the transfer window opening. I can hear joy, celebrations across the land, and the concern this might be a busy month for me in store where I might have to try and save my marriage for, in Daniel Levy's terms, the 148th time I get that final chance to do so. If you're with us for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms, we're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're also on Blue Sky 2. One man returning, two I've got that I'm very blessed with. One man is returning alongside me. Before I bring in our special guest, he always pops up when there's a transfer window around the corner. And I only mean Jamie Brown's back in the house. Jay, welcome back for year 8 of the transfer window on Last Word on Spurs. Maybe in a slightly different position where we are than what we normally are in terms of our league position, but happy to be back. How are you, bud?
I'm very good, thank you, Ricky. Firstly, obviously, Merry Christmas to all the listeners. I hope everyone had a nice Christmas and enjoyed that. Obviously, Spurs doing their very best to try and ruin it. But look, obviously now, unfortunately, our real existence seems to be on hoping that Arsenal, Chelsea drop points. So it was nice to see Chelsea drop points tonight. But yes, fortunately, a very sad state of affairs at the moment. But as we said, look, transfer windows open. I do love a transfer window, as everyone knows. It was the first time I've been on since seeing the new intro, seeing myself in all those shots, all transfers. So look, really pleased to be back on, and look, fantastic guest tonight. I'm really excited to be on with our guest, and Ricky, I'll let you introduce him.
Jay, thank you so much. Listen, this man, many are, as they always are with this band on the show, waiting in optimism, in hope, in fortune. But obviously we know with Tottenham, you can never second guess what is going to happen with our football club at any stage of proceedings. I'm delighted to welcome back to Last Word on Spurs. That many will know, look, by now, I want to say he is Mr. Bill Nicholson to the ex-following out there. But to us, he is the brilliant, the superb Paul O Keefe returning. Paul, Merry Christmas. Hope you had a lovely festive period. Bar Spurs in our lives. How are you? Love to have you back on here.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. Yeah, good, thank you. I had a decent Christmas, apart from coming down with a bit of a cold, but suffering from the man flu. But apart from that and Tottenham depressing me, everything's been really good, thank you.
Listen, mate, lovely to have you back on here. Sorry to hear you're, battling a cold at the moment. I know it does feel the case at the moment. There's so many people out there in similar circumstances. And to top it off, they want some escapism. They've got Tottenham as their football club. I mean, what could be quite simply, more challenging at the moment? Absolutely character building, as my father would have told me from a young age. This is what will make you and shape you. So listen, so much already lovely comments coming in for Paul. Delighted to have Paul back on here. And just to give everybody a bit of a rundown as to what we're going to be covering during this episode, we are, of course, previewing the upcoming January transfer window, what Spurs might do in this upcoming month. Where are we in terms of the future of Ange Postecoglou? Will he be backed? What does this next month or so look like for Spurs in store? And we're going to say, look, it's a big month for the football club, and a month where many supporters rightly feel the club need to do a huge amount of business to, many would argue, rescue the league season. Because, look, the reality is Spurs are still in a strong positions in those cup competitions for now. Like I say, we know we've got this huge double header against Liverpool to come in the Carabao Cup. Of course, Spurs have got two vital European games to come in their quest to qualify automatically in their Europa League group. And of course, we've got that FA Cup game against Tamworth, where game upon game, that feels like a harder tie at the moment, which sounds absolutely crazy. But only Spurs fans would talk like this, right? Only Spurs fans would talk like this. And just to give everybody listen, I think we're all going to be delighted to wave goodbye to the year of 2024, where for Tottenham, as we've discussed on a couple of previous shows, look, it's not been easy. We have suffered the most defeats of any Premier League team, with the exception of Wolves and Brentford. We'll finish New Year's Day in our lowest league position in 16 years. This is the first time Spurs will be in the bottom half of the Premier League table at the end of the season of 2008-2009. As many will see, for those that are watching the show live, this is our leanest points return for any calendar year since 2008. And of course, that result against Wolves at the weekend meant it was more drop points for Tottenham. 17th place Wolves, of course, Spurs dropping points. They're currently 5 home league matches without a win. It's our worst home run since October 2008, and the third home league game in a row in 4 where Spurs have cranked up the music at full time to drown out the boos. Paul, we'll bring you in because I mentioned the fact about where Spurs currently are. You know, they're 11 points off the top four. They're 10 points away from the drop. And even if Tottenham were to have beaten Wolves, this would have been our lowest points tally at the midway point of a Premier League season since the 08-09 season. How would you describe the current feeling, if you can, from you as a fan, also just around the football club at the moment?
I think the fans, obviously, you know, it's a depressing time for the fans, isn't it? They just seem to need a bit of direction. The Tottenham hierarchy. I mean, we don't know where they stand with Ange at the moment. Obviously, the feeling, the word coming out is that for the time being, he's absolutely fine. And you know, the issues they've got are that if they were to dispense with the manager now, with this busy period coming up in January, you know, you're going to ask a new guy to walk in the door and have a game every 3 days and still deal with the same squad and the same injury issues. So I don't necessarily believe that's something they are keen on doing. I think they'd love for it to work out with Ange, to be honest with you. But you know, sort of, you have to sort of put the blame partly at his door as well, because you know, you got to manage these situations, and he seems to be hell bent on sticking to this. I'm sticking to my principles. I won't change, and I think that's all well and good if you have the tools that are going to enable you to do that. But currently, we don't. So it's about maximising the tools that you do have, and sort of getting the best from them. And I don't think you can genuinely say that Spurs are doing that. But as far as the board are concerned, I think that there's naturally going to be concern, obviously, because you can't continue this run. It's just not feasible. They'll turn around and say, well, we've invested X amount of money. You know, this isn't good enough, which is understandable to a certain degree. But this all goes back for me to the summer. They promised so much and kept feeding out various lines for various targets and things like that. And in the end, it was a bit of a damp squib. Yes, they got their number 9, and no one can sort of complain too much about the influence Dominic Solanke's had. I think he's been impactful, more impactful than I thought he would be. He's not a player that I personally would have signed, but he's done very well. So you can give them a plus for that. You could probably give them a plus for Archie Gray had you signed, you know, players alongside him to help the lad come through. But he's played far too much football. It was never the intention that he would play the amount of games he has, and they've left themselves woefully short. I mean, I was talking earlier to someone today, and if you can actually chart it, if you go back to Spurs leaving Old White Hart Lane and going a season unbeaten, you can gradually see the interest and the focus moving away from the team. They were so obsessed with this stadium build. They were so obsessed with these commercial deals, so obsessed with, you know, filling the coffers. And the team, as a result, you know, I feel has been neglected in those 7 or 8 years. I mean, they were hitting second, third, fourths in the league, and they were reaching a Champions League final. That was the time to sort of press the accelerator. But they sort of stood still, as we all know. And I think now that, you know, all those things are coming home to roost, basically. It's the same with the squad development. You know, we're now itching as a fan base for Ben Davies to be fit. Now, I have a lot of respect for Ben. He's a top pro. I get all that. But he was signed by Pochettino 10 years ago, and he's still the only sort of backup as the left-sided defender. You know, that can't be right. I mean, it's not like I say, it's no slight on the player, but it just shows you the sort of negligence towards the squad building over the past sort of 7 years plus now. So I think it's a few chickens coming home to roost.
Yeah, obviously, just quickly on Ange. I mean, you mentioned it there, just being left short in so many areas. I mean, defence has been like really badly hit, especially during Ange's time. I think he's had 68 games in charge now, Ange. In only 37% of those games, he's had that fully fit back 5 of Vicario, Mickey van der Ven, Romero, Porro, and Udogie. And obviously, you know, there has been a bit of a difference when they've played and when they haven't. When they have played, we've got a win percentage of 1.88 points per game, whereas without them, it's only 1.5 points per game. So obviously, you know, do you feel like he's kind of been dealt quite a tricky hand at Spurs? And obviously that's led to a real divide in the fan base in terms of, you know, so many people that are still very firmly backing Ange, but there's a lot that are, you know, really do want him gone. So have you ever seen kind of this big divide? And can you understand why there is such a divide at the moment between Ange in and Ange out?
Yeah, I can understand it, because the people that are Ange out are saying, look, this guy won't bend, he won't adapt, and there's merit to that argument, because ultimately you've got to get the best and maximize the best out of what you've been given. So that's his job as a manager. It's all very well to say, I have principles and I have a way of playing and we're going to stick to this and it'll pay off in the end. Well, it's always jam tomorrow, isn't it? You know, ultimately this is a results-based industry. So there's only so long you can sort of tolerate that. And we're 18 months into the tenure. We're not 6 months into the tenure. So, you know, I think, and he on record is always saying, you know, I take responsibility. You know, I wanted this player, I wanted that player. And that's all he's fronting it up. Fair enough. He's taking the flak. But we know, anyone with an ounce of common sense deep down, that we know that the board have failed in giving him the tools, because his system will work if you've got a luxury of players, and Tottenham don't have that luxury of players. I mean, like we've already touched on briefly, the left side of the defence, we haven't had a left-sided defender come in for, like I say, for donkey's years, which, you know, it was a glaring hole in the squad. We went into the season with a 23-man squad that are over 21 years of age, and we had to mess around with the European numbers. And we had to omit one of our young players just to get in, you know, the sub goalkeeper. And we also named another two kids because of the homegrown quarters and things. So again, it all goes back to a bit the negligence of the squad over the years, and they've ended up in a position where, yes, the manager's fronting it all up and he's taking the flak, and the combination of him refusing to budge and sort of try and maximise and change systems and change personnel in the sense of, you know, how they play, that combination just isn't working currently. I mean, if you watched on versus Wolves the second half, the last 20 minutes, these players were dead on their feet.
Yep.
I mean, Decky, like he was running in treacle, he was just shattered, absolutely shattered. And these guys have got to face another 7 or 8 fixtures in the month of January every 3 days. So, I mean, the word out of the club is they want bodies. Well, you know, anyone could tell you that. They need bodies desperately. And yeah, with regards to the feeling of the fans, it's totally understandable, because they've been sold a dream for so long. They've been promised that we're going to move into this stadium and this will help us compete. These revenues will help us compete, go for the top players and get a strong squad and be able to challenge for honours. Well, they've cut the wage bill by about 15% since they've moved into the new stadium, and the revenues are higher. So the two don't equate, do they? You know, and they've got this new, well, newish sort of wage structure thing, which they're obviously trimming the fat. Which to me, and it's only an opinion, to me it looks like they're doing that to make the business look more sellable in the sense of to an investor, not sellable as in the whole club, but sellable as in part of our, come and join us, and this is the reason why. Look at our forecast, look at our growth, look at our percentage of turnover to wage ratio. We're the most profitable club to invest in, and all the rest of it. There's the sales pitch. But in the meantime, that focus has been taken away from the team in my eyes, and the team has been left to rot somewhat to a certain extent.
I might put it bluntly by saying this, Paul. You know, this is just my opinion as a fan now talking. That it just feels that we're almost stuck in a. I've described Spurs as kind of like a Mike Ashley hamster wheel, where we'll top enough money in to try and get us in around the top 6, but anything beyond that, we're almost now waiting patiently for some form of investment. And Daniel has obviously said this and publicly communicated this in the recent fans forum, that we are going to need an injection of an investment to enhance both the men's and the women's first team. So when it comes to transfer windows, I know, like I say, we bring you on here with your wonderful insight you've got. This is why I've really remained cautious when it comes to really what the ambition is now at Spurs, because you know, you mentioned there the fact we left White Hart Lane. You know, we was in a title race. We had a squad that arguably I think needed 3 or 4 players, maybe at the maximum, to really put us in a position where we could actually go on and win the league, let alone challenge, win the league. And here we are now 5-6 years later where, you know, I can't even stop and look at the league table at the moment. You know, it's beggars belief where we are at the moment.
It's just my opinion, but you get the feeling that ENIC are totally disinterested. I'm not talking about Daniel Levy. I'm talking about ENIC. I think my opinion, I think ENIC would sell tomorrow if someone come in with the money. But I don't think Daniel would. And Daniel's a major shareholder.
Right.
So I wonder, and again, it's just, you know, my mind going over time probably. I wonder if there's a little bit of a battle there as well as to who sees what the plan is for the future. Is it an exit plan? Because ENIC have got enough money to invest themselves. They don't need investors. If they really wanted Spurs to be successful and they wanted the football team to be the number one priority and we are going to challenge, then put the money in yourself, because ENIC have the money. So it's not, we're talking about billion-pound organisations here. We're not talking about some bloke running a car boot sale. You know, they've got the money. So why do they need investment in the first place? That needs to be questioned. What is the plan? You know, they never told us this. They said, yeah, we're seeking investment. Well, yeah, for what? For you to leave? For someone else to pick the foot of the bill for the football club and you just cream off the hotels and the stadium? What is the actual plan? You know, where do we see Tottenham in 10 years' time? Is it still under the ownership of ENIC? Or are you seeking investment so you can have an exit plan similar to the one that United have set up with Ineos? So there's that grey area for me. Like I say, my only thought on that is perhaps there's some sort of power struggle going on between ENIC Towers and Daniel Levy. I don't know, and it's pure speculation. But I don't understand why they need investment.
You know, again, it's a subject we've touched upon here on a number of occasions, Paul, as you all know. And you know, the situation now, as we know, around the stadium. For many, it's uncomfortable going there in terms of the fact of just what you are seeing actually in front of your eyes, the lack of investment over the course of many, many years to the product that's being put on the pitch right now for what, you know, loyal fans are having to pay in terms of their season ticket money for what they're getting as a result of the product. I think, you know, as crackers will often say here, you know, it's almost like you're in a Michelin star restaurant, but you're being given, you know, Burger King burgers to have to serve. I mean, when you're not really getting the product that you feel you're being sold on the pitch. Is this an opportunity, this window, to try, I wouldn't say win some fans back, because I feel there's now a general majority of fans that have made their case very, very clear where they stand on this board. But does it feel a pivotal window in the fact that they have to show some feeling now towards not only Ange Postecoglou, but the fans and the general club, that if we don't act fast, take away Ange Postecoglou for a second, given Tottenham's league position, and the fact that it's been made very clear to us under ENIC's reign how important European football is. And I know Spurs have got the opportunity through the Europa League to get back in there, and dare I say an FA Cup or the League Cup to get back into some form of Europe. But the club have always prided itself on the league position being so important. In your opinion, does this make this window even more pivotal than maybe some of the previous January windows?
Yeah, and Daniel Levy has proved throughout history that he is a reactive chairman, that he's not proactive. So if you were top of the league, 10 points clear with, you know, 20 games to go or something, he wouldn't go out and buy your £50 million striker that's going to seal the Premier League title for you. If you were 5 points from the bottom, then he would go and buy that £50 million striker. You know, that's the way he's behaved. He did it, you know, most famously when it was Redknapp came in, wasn't it? 2 points from 8 games and all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, Spurs, you know, flashed a bit of cash in the market, got themselves out of trouble. So I think the issue is they thought that the grass would stay green forever, I think, under Pochettino. And they sort of stood, well, they didn't, they stood still. You know, we went a whole summer window, the only club in Premier League history to do so, where didn't sign a player. And that's old ground. We've been over it time and time again. But it's Groundhog Day with Tottenham, isn't it? You know, they want people to constantly overachieve. And that's the only way you can be successful at Tottenham, is by overachieving. It's the same for the players. You know, it's not from the top down. They just don't breed this winning mentality. It's oh, didn't we do well? You know, we got to fourth. We got Champions League football. Why do we need to change? You know, tills are ringing. What's the problem? But as fans, we want to see silverware. There's a generation of fans that are growing up now that haven't seen Tottenham win a trophy. And they claim to be this big super club, and they want to join the European Super League and all. You know, and they want to charge top dollar, among the highest ticket prices in Europe, for a product that's not really. You know, it's just this cycle of sort of nothingness. You know, every time they get close, they sort of shit the bed.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a miserable fan. This is factual. This is what's happened continually. And people will say, well, they came in and we were mid-table and we didn't have a stadium. You know, we didn't own a nice fashion stadium and all the rest of it. And there is a chance that they could leave us exactly where they found us, apart from the stadium.
It's insane, isn't it? It's insane. It's
and that,
insane, really.
You know, 24 years later, Daniel Levy's had 14 attempts at appointing a manager. And people are saying, oh, let him appoint another one. It boggles the mind, you know. And if he was an employee of any other industry and any other company, he'd been sacked years ago. But when you own the keys, I suppose it's different, isn't it?
But I think that's the thing as well. You mentioned, you know, how far he has taken us as an actual club off the pitch. You know,
no one can deny that. That's great. The commercialism and all the rest of it, yeah, brilliant.
But
he's also made mistakes there as well.
Exactly. Well, there, but then obviously as well, you look at what we've done on the pitch. He's responsible for our longest trophy drought in history. So, you know, that's what you'd probably go back and say to them. And you know, Spurs fans, brilliant that we got the stadium, brilliant we got the training facilities, but you know, I'm not going to be able to go to work, or you know, people aren't going to go to school and be able to brag about that. As you know, it's the trophies, and obviously that's not been coming, has it? Just bringing it back on to Ange, obviously, you know, we're in an awful position at the moment. Just not just the results. It's just the situation we find ourselves in with so many injuries, playing a match every 3 days. You know, we know how intense Ange Postecoglou can be. It's it's very demanding. So, you know, do you think there's kind of an understanding from the club at the moment in terms of the situation that Ange finds himself in, where he's got a very limited squad, players who are, you know, just about the last guy standing. You know, they look knackered, as you mentioned. Kulusevski looks knackered. Dominic Solanke looks knackered. I mean, is that kind of buying a bit of time at the moment? Do we know kind of how long he might have to turn things around? And I know the Liverpool game and obviously that cup semi-final was mentioned as potentially a pivotal moment for him. Do we know kind of where we stand at with how long he might have to turn things around at Spurs?
Yeah, I mean the only word coming out to various people is that he's sort of safe for now. I mean, they had to take some responsibility for it. Yeah, ultimately, I hope they're looking at themselves and going, you know, this is a result of us taking our eye off the ball since the stadium move. Really, I mean, you know, we've burned through 4 or 5 managers in whatever 4 or 5 years. So they have to take some responsibility for it. And Tottenham itself, I mean, we're basically lauding a guy, a clever businessman, granted, but we're basically lauding a guy for getting a mortgage and building a home. You know, you know, when ENIC took over Tottenham, basically not long after the Sky boom sort of started. So the money that went into football then we just went sort of off the scale. So they've inherited some very good circumstances, and they've been quite lucky owners in that sense. So it's a completely different ball game now to compare it to clubs. Oh, where were you in the 80s? We were shit and all the rest of it. Yeah, and there was no money in football then in comparison to what it is now. I mean, now you're talking about youth players picking up £20,000 a week, and you know, 2 bob players picking up 50s and 70s and 80 grand a week. It's got silly. But yeah, as far as Ange is concerned, I mean, he's trying to sort of steady a ship that's sort of sinking rapidly because of lack of numbers. And you know, you can obviously lay the blame at his door for tactics and how we approach games and how we deal with in-game management. My criticism of him wouldn't be the approach so much. You know, overall his philosophy is fine. It's the in-game management where I think people have valid criticisms. You know, when you score 5 minutes from half time against Liverpool to get yourself back in a game and you've been absolutely terrible, you shut down the hatches for 5 minutes, you get yourselves organised, you get in at half time, you regroup, and you make a couple of changes, and you try and stem the tide. What do? We score, and then we concede a minute before the end of half time. We can't even survive 5 minutes. Of course, then the game's 3-1. Your half time talk changes. The boys are demoralised. Yeah. We're 90 yards up the field, leaving a 3-on-1 or 3-on-2 at the back a minute before half time, and that's just naivety. As much as we want to say blame the players and blame hamstrings and all the rest of it, that's a coaching issue, that particular one. And it's happened at Brighton. We can't be throwing away two goal leads at half time at Brighton and cruising. We weren't just cruising, we were battering them. And it seems it's all or nothing with Spurs, in the sense that they ever win 4 or 5 like at Southampton or 3 or 4 like when we beat United, or they just capitulate. There's no sort of in between, is there?
But do you think, Paul, just on that point before Jay comes back in there, do you think there's any sense of acknowledgement from Ange that, given what we find ourselves in the injury crisis, which I know many people have got their own view on, that there is going to need to be a slight adjustment or a slight bend when it comes to the way...
He's not going to change. No, he won't change. And now, see, the thing is, now he's also dug a hole where he can't get out of it, hasn't he? Because he can't suddenly change and all of a sudden play with 2 DMs and start, being defensive minded. That's not going to happen. And I had a conversation yesterday with someone about this, and saying, like, he's a very experienced coach. No one can take that away from him. He's got 25 years in the game.
Yep.
But he's not experienced in the Premier League, and the Premier League is so unforgiving. And he's probably sat there going, yeah, but I've seen this work at every single club and every single job I've had, and I know this, and it does work. He knows it works. But in the Premier League, that's a totally different ball game. It's so unforgiving that I think you have to sort of bend on your principles, and all the top managers have bent on their principles.
Yeah.
Just to go on that a bit further, there, Paul, but we're not asking him, Paul, I'm sure you agree. No. I'm not asking him to completely change his philosophy. No. I'm not. Nobody actually is asking that. I think what we're asking is that during this element of where we are with this injury situation, it's just to show a little bit of. I know people might not like that word pragmatism, but a slight adaptation given the injuries that we're in. And would you not be surprised, Paul? Look, as we know with Daniel Levy, maybe he's far from the right person to advise a manager on tactics or coaching. But is there an element where you would think there is the powers that be upstairs? Hopefully, there's some common sense or logic being spoken there, saying anybody around him, even the coaching staff, who with all due respect, we know he didn't arrive with, they were obviously there at the time of his arrival, and he's working with these respective coaches. But the likes of the 2 guys that have come in, obviously from Hibernian, Montgomery, and of course Sergio Raimondo, I can't quite fail to believe that nobody is having this conversation as a group of 3 or 4, saying, look, we've got 10 players out, we've got 3 automatic starters, we've got to adjust it a little bit here. Is that mad? Am I crazy? No.
Yeah, I know, and they work tirelessly on all that as well in training. Like Nick and the other guys work relentlessly on set piece defending and all that sort of stuff, and they're doing it. They're doing their job in that sense. It's just they're just told to push up and play without fear, which is great. But there has to be some sort of, like you said earlier, some pragmatism and some tweaking here and there. And like I said, but he doesn't. He just is unrelenting in his. And like I say, I think he's dug himself a bit of a hole now, where he's now being a bit stubborn, or more than a bit stubborn about it, and sort of digging his heels in. And maybe it's a message to the board as well that we need help, as a sort of subconscious sort of dig at them. But it can't keep coming out every single press conference having to face these questions. At some point he's going to have to adjust. Because January is just so tough. The fixtures in January. I mean, if he gets through January, that's. I think it's a key now, personally, but that's just opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in terms of what might be next, into if Ange was to go. I mean, look, for me, I've always been a massive backer of Ange. I wanted him when we appointed him. Obviously, there has been some frustrations creeping in, and even now, as said, someone who really supported him, I am having question marks, and I know there's going to be lots of people who, we see it all the time on social media, people who really want him out. So obviously there is going to be talk of what might be next. We saw in Turkey, I think it was the Besiktas president, one of the candidates was suggesting that Edin Tezerek, who was supposedly a candidate for their job, had some agreement with Spurs, which was, or maybe, had some, words with Spurs about potentially taking over. I mean, firstly, is there any truth in that? Is there potentially and what might this mean if that is the case? Are they looking at replacements for Ange, or is there a possibility that we might have to see Ryan Mason come in if Ange was to go? Do we know if they are making contingency plans for sacking Ange?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in football, obviously, they'll be aware of who's available and who's not available, and agents will be pushing people to them. If push comes to shove, we have X, Y, Z available. And football is very cliquey like that. So it wouldn't take Spurs a great deal of effort to get themselves a huge list of candidates for the vacancy. I think the minute you start sort of broadcasting that,
you sure, Paul? Even now,
yeah. I mean,
God, we laugh and joke, Paul, don't we? We laugh and joke saying, I mean, as much as the job might be attractive, it must be testing as well, right? I mean, it's going to be really testing.
Absolutely. But every manager has that ego inside them that thinks that they could be the one that could change. And if they did change Tottenham and win something at Tottenham, they will go down in history. And they'll also be a bloody miracle worker. But they have to have that blind faith and optimism in themselves, don't they? And of course, if it's an elite manager, then the paycheck will obviously, come into the equation. Although the way Spurs sort of been a bit thrifty with their cash these days, you'd expect them to go for probably another sort of lesser sort of elite name. I know that Johan Lang is obviously very close to Thomas Frank. And whether he would be sort of someone that Tottenham would consider, I presume they would, because obviously what he's done at Brentford is widely admired. So I'd imagine that if, and I'm not saying that Ange is close to getting the sack at all, but if it came to a case of they were looking for candidates, then I'd expect Thomas Frank to be high on the list. I'd expect Kieran McKenna to be on there because he's obviously an upcoming manager, and the relationship with Base, he's a Base man. So if they were asked to get the next Tottenham manager in, I'm sure that he would be a candidate. But I don't think the guy you mentioned, is it Edin Terzic? Is it? I don't believe that he's. I don't think that's a possibility. No, not currently anyway. No one's sort of pushing his name around with any sort of credibility. That particular video clip is about a week old now, and not one sort of UK tabloid or serious journalist has ran it, which is a bit sort of, they've either been warned away, which normally happens. The club will normally send out a text warning them away from something and just say avoid it, or it'll be rubbished somewhere. But I haven't really seen any sort of coverage of it over here from our sort of tabloids. So I think we could rule that one out. But I do think January is, I keep saying it, but I think January is a very pivotal month, because you could end up in a situation where they're out of all competitions.
Yep. I mean, we've touched upon that there, like January's month there. I mean, like I say, just for those that are on audio, just to be clear, obviously our month does start in the new year with Newcastle at home at a resurgent. They've had 5 wins in a row. They've just come off the back of a win against Manchester United away. Spurs have then got that huge first leg in the Carabao Cup semi-final, first leg to Liverpool. That is then followed by Tamworth in the FA Cup, which I keep laughing and joking by game. Looks like a tougher fixture than really what it should be. It then follows with Arsenal away in the Premier League. I mean, look, no one needs to be told how big a North London derby is, and given our record against Arsenal under Ange Postecoglou, there'll be a lot of emphasis put on our performance in that game, maybe albeit not the result, because we know how tough it is going to the Emirates on our record there. That is then followed by a trip away to Everton, Goodison Park. Everton, of course. Look, they've been interesting side Everton recently. They've obviously had that news that they have got their takeover that their fans have craved. That is through the door. So there's maybe some excitement around Goodison Park. And they've also been under decent form in terms of being unbeaten recently. Spurs then have obviously Hoffenheim away in the Europa League, one of two crucial fixtures in that month. They now have Leicester City at home. I don't really know anymore what is a home banker with Tottenham. You'd like to think that's a home banker, but you can't ever be sure these days. And then Spurs finish that month away, at home again to Elfsborg, which will conclude the Europa League. And it goes back to your point, as you say there, Paul. January is a defining month for the football club where we all know one way or another where we are in those cup competitions. Do you think that is, as we touched upon Paul already, the cup competitions it does feel ready for a club like we are right now? It's mad to say this. It's cups or bust. Is that fair to say for this season in terms of success now, Paul?
Yeah, it looks that way. And I mean, they've drawn Liverpool, which, I just cannot see us beating them over two legs. They're just maybe a one-off. You might get a result, but I just can't see us beating Liverpool over 180, 190 minutes, whatever, home and away sort of thing. Particularly as we're likely not to have our centre backs for that game at home. So the first leg, I fancy Liverpool will go strong and try and take advantage of that. So then they can rotate if they're 3 or 4 up in the second leg, And I think they've got Coventry or someone in the FA Cup, haven't they, before it? I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. So they'll probably rotate the game before. So, or is it the game after? I'm not sure. So, I think they'll go strong against us in the semi. So, unfortunately, I think I'm writing that one off. Newcastle at home Saturday. Saturday becomes massive because after that you're in the league. The next league game is away at Arsenal. So, that's really you'd put your house on Arsenal at the moment to beat us.
I have to ask you this, Paul, again. I know, like I say, the manager's in a delicate situation right now. We wouldn't really give Ryan Mason back the job again at the end of the season, would we? We'd have to do something different if it came to the point where if they have to remove Ange at his post, we're not going to really go down Ryan Mason at the helm again, are we? And I mean that with no disrespect to Ryan, but the fact that I don't really see there's going to be any uplift in terms of results between now and the end of the season if we do that. I mean, surely there's got to be another plan, hasn't there? If that is the case, I'm saying, if Ange can't turn this situation around,
I mean, if it was just done on not on a whim, but if it was done just look, we can't tolerate this anymore, and you have to go, then I think Ryan will naturally have to sit in. How long that takes, that process, because it's difficult to go behind the current manager's back and appoint someone and then sack him one day and appoint a new manager the next day and expect him to get different results with the same sort of ingredients. I mean, you're giving the chef the same ingredients and expecting different results. And yes, you can get a bit of a bounce, but United have had no bounce. So that's the sort of cautionary tale, I think, as well. And a new guy, is he going to want to walk in halfway through a transfer window and say you've already bought 3 or 4 players?
Well, that was going to be my next question to you before we do go for a break there. That's what I was going to ask you. How much does January's transfer window and the timing of it and our form right now come into all the puzzle really in regards to, when you're looking at our form at the moment, when you're saying, do you back a manager in the January transfer window and give him more money? I know, again, there's a lot of frustration, anger out there to think, Ange will have close to nearly 400 million spent on this squad. I mean, I'm intrigued about at 400 million, really, how many of these players that he actually did want. Again, I think and I don't put words in your mouth, I think there's been conversations where he balked at or Daniel Levy balked at the fact of maybe buying Solanke at the time, or reportedly balked at these suggestions. I mean,
it's all about finances for the hierarchy. So obviously they were concerned about the numbers that were involved, but they had to get a 9 in. And the problem that Spurs face is that they have this wage structure that they've sort of introduced since Harry left, where Sonny is the top earner, and they won't get anyone else close to that. So they've decided that they're going to keep under a certain ceiling. And Dominic Solanke was the best choice of centre forward for the wages they're prepared to offer. And everyone gets caught up with the amount of transfer fees, and I get that. And yes, he has spent a lot of money on paper, but you have to remember these fees are amortized, so they're all forecast over long term. They're all dealt with over the length of the contract of the player. So if you're buying a £50 million striker for 5 years contract, then you're paying £10 million a year for him plus his salary. Now, obviously, if you've got someone in the building like Harry Kane who's taking, say, 250 to 300,000 pounds out of the club over the next. If you kept him for another 3-4 years, I'm not sure the maths off the top of my head, but that's obviously a huge amount of wage that you're paying. Whereas if you can get a 9 in like Dominic, who, from what I understand, is on about 125, so he's on less than 50% of what Harry was on. The two things will even out, in terms of fee and what you would have been paying your other striker. So people do get sort of caught up with, he spent 400 million. They bought players that aren't necessarily going to be just for this manager either. So it's about future returns, potential ones. Not that Spurs are very good at moving players on, but if you buy Archie at 18 for 40 million, there's a fairly reasonable chance that money is going to come back to you over the next sort of 5 or 10 years. And if not, then the salary that he'll be taking, sort of 50 grand a week, whatever, is not comparable to if you go and try and buy an established 25-year-old centre mid or 26, whatever. I don't know. What age is Conor Gallagher, for example? Conor has gone to Atletico on over £250,000 a week. So, the top players now are top money, and we're going to touch on it later. But you've got the likes of Jack Grealish being linked to Spurs, and Marcus Rashford, £300,000 a week. I mean, that's just pie in the sky. It's just crazy. That's just not. People don't. Do people understand how Daniel Levy runs this football club? I'm not sure if that's the case. Unless sorry, go on. No,
please carry on, Paul. Please carry on.
No, I was just going to say, unless Man City are literally going to pay us to take him, I just cannot see how that happens, and I can't see how Man City, with their current run of form, needing to get into that top 4, and they've got injuries themselves, would be willing to sort of let a Premier League club like Spurs take him off their hands. Maybe abroad. I don't know.
I mean, that's like you said there. There's so many variables when it comes to the window, and obviously the fact that we've got a situation around the manager, around the board, that quite honestly does make for a maybe again I use that word, an interesting month, an intriguing month, a month where it'll be interesting to see at the end of it if we have answers to the questions. I think that'll be key, isn't it? I mean, the thing what you'd like to think coming at the end of January for those that want to be optimistic and hopeful is that we're going to come to the end of January and he's going to have more players that are able to play his system. That are then in turn going to hopefully see an upturn in results, an upturn in the trajectory of the way we play.
And going back to the actual original question about whether they back or sack sort of thing. I mean, like we said, if you're going into a window now, so say you sign 4 players for Ange Postecoglou, and then you sack him, what was the point of that? Because your new guy has had no input on those signings. There's no sort of plan there, that you just look absolutely ridiculous. And then by the same token, you have to, if you stick with him now, I believe, then you probably have to stick with him till the summer, because again, to give him 4 or 5 players, 5 would be extreme, but 3 or 4 players now and then pull the rug, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Because it just doesn't equate, does it? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So you either get rid of him now and let someone else have the window, or if you do start bringing players in, this new manager won't have had an input. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that just to finish up, like that's a big concern for me, because I think that's a real possibility that they might do that. They might think, we'll go and get those bodies in for Ange. They'll get some players in that maybe Ange had some input of getting, and they maybe sack him in maybe 2 or 3 months' time, and then obviously the new manager.
Yeah.
But you'd think that that's just a possibility, because there just seems to be, as you mentioned earlier, it's all reactive. There's no kind of real long-term plan, and I mean that just seems to be a real frustration. And as much as it sounds crazy, I can just see it happening. You can just see it happening. They get Ange the players, and then sack him a few months later.
Well, if you remember, Jay, and an example to this, Jay, as well, is that that month we were chasing Pedro Porro for the whole month. I think it was of the January transfer window.
Yeah.
we then spent 30 days chasing Pedro Porro. We got Pedro Porro in, and what did we do days after we got Pedro Porro in, or a few weeks later? We sacked Antonio Conte.
But look, I mean, Udogie
I'm not, I'm not saying the form didn't deserve it.
Yeah, go on.
No, I'm not saying the form didn't deserve it, but again, it's one of those things with Porro. When you look at the fact that you're spending all month chasing a player, and I'll let you come back in on this, Jay. That we then decided to sack the manager that wanted the player. I mean, it's just mental, Jay, right? Mental.
Yeah, sorry, I kept trying to jump in there because I just felt at this point. I mean, you look at Udogie and Porro, obviously two very clear, wing backs, and obviously before we signed them under a manager who played with wing backs, and I think they're both brilliant footballers. But you just wonder whether when you play a back four, there was always going to be big question marks as to whether they were going to fit in. And obviously they've had some great moments under Ange, but I think a lot of the time there has been big question marks. So again, it just comes down to kind of that lack of forward planning and just a real clear vision. And so I love them both, but you just question maybe whether they are suitable for a back four. And again, it just comes down to poor planning, really. I think
also on Ange, I think a point which probably is sort of not looked at all. And again, it's just my opinion, but I do wonder whether the club obviously are out there trying to get investment. So they're trying to portray to these prospective buyers how stable the club are. So if they sacked Ange, that sort of kicks that into touch. They then look a complete shambles, and potential investors will be looking at it and going, well, do they actually know what they're doing? And secondly, what if that investor is very close to doing a deal with you, and they want to have an input on that, and they want to have an input on the next manager? So you don't know whether Spurs are keeping their powder dry just because they're trying to get something else over the line, and this is why the team has been sort of a secondary thought, because normally Daniel Levy would not let us the team slip to sort of 12th or 13th or 14th in the table. You would that's very, very, no manager, I don't think. Well, you've shown the stats. This is our worst return for how many years was it?
You have to go back to 2008 for for the return of points. And I mean, just on that point again, we look at the managerial record. You go and Paul as well, just to not further accelerate this conversation even more, because I know we've done this part of this conversation, but Ange has got this lowest points return going all the way back to Christian Gross. And I won't remind you, Paul, of your feelings about Christian Gross at the time, because I don't think they're broadcast on the show, are they? No, about how we felt at the time.
No, but I mean, so the back of my mind, I think, is there a bigger sort of thing at play here, where they just don't want to be seen like a complete car crash, even though they are, because they're perhaps developed with investors. Investors are saying, well, no, the whole fight, we want to come in, we want to be involved in these sort of decisions. I don't know, I'm just speculating, but it just makes you wonder why there's sort of just complete silence and no public backing, which is not unusual. Not many clubs come out and publicly back their manager. But at the same time, there's not feelers being put out. All they keep saying, safe for now, which is not totally reassuring, I would guess, if you're in Ange's shoes. But there's just so much that, and this is it with Tottenham, this is what pisses me off with them. There's so much going on off the field. The football is like a byproduct. The talk is never about the football or the team. It's always about something going on in the boardroom. It's all about hotels and corporate days out and fucking go-karts and all the rest of it. The team are sort of they're sort of down the road of priorities, and that's also happened. We've sort of become brainwashed with that. We're losing focus of what the football club is actually supposed to be about. They're part of a local community. They're supposed to support that local community. Instead, they're knocking pensioners' concessions, and they're saying if you're under 18, you've got to pay more. And we don't give a shit about the next generation of fans, because we don't really like season ticket holders, because we can get more money for an individual match ticket. There's all this stuff going on, and it's sort of you sort of become totally disillusioned with the whole game. But I'm just ranting now. But
no, it's fine. I think again, to put your point there in summary, I think what I again summarised it all up was that Liverpool game. It was 6-3, and you had the Squid Games coming out, blocking people's views at £1,300 a season ticket.
Yeah,
look, you might argue they might want to see that. You might argue they want to see the game at that point of 6-3, but Beggars believe what was going on in that
listen,
stadium. Beggars believe.
As I said to someone the other day, I couldn't give a shit if Daniel Levy earns £25 million a year if the club are winning trophies and I don't think anyone cares. No one cares what Daniel Levy already takes £4.5 million bonus and they've not won a thing.
Yep.
And all they've done is increase ticket prices. Yeah, people are going to get pissed and quite rightly so. You know, they're paying more for a product and getting less for it. Which is it's just they wouldn't get away with it in any other industry, and this is where football is different, and this is where people have to understand. Yeah, but it's a business now. We understand that as football fans, but they're in such a privileged position that to just only take advantage of that, you know, people have got to sort of stand up for it.
Totally agree. Look, what we are going to do, we're going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. And we have got nearly over 6,000 of you that are watching the show live. Thank you so much, as always, for your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We do appreciate these are testing times, which I always say that we want to try and make the shows as watchable and as listenable as possible. But we appreciate with what the product is on the pitch, that can be quite hard to do. I'm joined by Jamie Brown, returning just in time for the transfer window. When do you ever see Jamie on here during normal times? It's the transfer window season. He's popping up. Jamie's got the easiest job in the world. He only comes on during the January and the summer period. He can just bugger off and leave us to it and deal with the season, Jay. You got the easy job, right, Jay? The easy one.
Well, to a certain extent, but then obviously, you know, when the amount of business that we do in these transfer windows can be incredibly frustrating as well. But I mean, obviously, I'll take it on to the next point now. We wanted to just discuss our captain, Heung-Min Son. Obviously, been a real strange season, but for Sonny, he's had really mixed form. Still put up some fairly decent numbers, but I think for his standards, been well below it. Obviously, be just interesting to get your take on his form. And obviously, we are coming up to a situation where I think in January the 1st, he's going to have opportunities to start speaking to foreign clubs. I mean, obviously they have that option. There has been that talk of that option. So do we kind of know what the latest is with Sonny's contract? And again, just what have you made of his form, and might that have an impact on Sonny?
Yeah, it's really strange with Sonny because I think it was about a year ago that they sort of initiated that they were going to give him a contract and started sort of informal talks with sort of his camp. So it was always sort of suggested that he was going to get a longer deal, and then that seemed to change in the last sort of 3 or 4 months. And this is only opinion, but his form has dived since. Now, when you think about it from his point of view, so put yourself in Sonny's shoes. You've been at that football club for, I don't know, how long's he been there now? 9 years? 10 years? Has he done 10 years now? And
we're coming up to 10 years, aren't we? Coming up to 10, I'm right in saying. I see John, Jason on as well. Nearly 10 years.
He's given them his prime years. He's also the most commercially and financially profitable football player they've ever had at the club, in the history of the club, without question, commercially. The amount of revenue he's brought into that club. And all of a sudden, he's probably thinking to himself, and again, it's just my opinion and just something that I sort of thought about. He's probably sitting there thinking, they're taking the piss. They're waiting until I get to the last knock-ins before sort of coming to the table and saying, you know what, you deserve a 3-year deal because of everything you've done for this football club. You're the captain of this football club. You've brought commercial revenue and got us to a position where we could challenge. All right, they couldn't challenge now, but Sonny at his peak was him, obviously with Harry. He's been through countless managers as well, and he stood by them. And you're not telling me there hasn't been occasions where he could have left the football club, because there would have been people in his ear. So I wonder if it's a case of he's a bit pissed, really, because they've not come to the table with this deal that they'd promised maybe a year, 18 months ago. Now, again, that's me speculating, but his form has sort of just dived in the last 3 months. People say, oh, his legs are gone. But, I mean, there will be an element of truth to that, of course, but I just wonder if there's a little bit of politics going on outside of the actual. Again, we're talking about outside of the actual football, but I just wonder, and it's just a theory that I come up with in my own head, so it might be complete nonsense, but I just wonder if that's at play. Spurs will trigger the extensions, the talking to other clubs in January. I mean, can you imagine if they let Son go?
I was going to ask you, you've got no doubt about that, Paul, for you. They'll definitely trigger that extension as far as you're concerned.
No, they'll trigger the year. They potentially might improve it and might offer a 2-year or something, but they'll trigger the year extension, obviously. And then who knows? Maybe it's in limbo because they're not sure about the investment coming in and who's going to be writing the checks and who's going to be sort of signing off long player contracts. But it is a strange one. And like I say, for a good 18 months ago, all the indications were, and they themselves were putting out the feelers that they would be offering Sonny a new deal. So it's a bit of a weird one for it to have changed in the last sort of 3 or 4 months.
One more on that before Jay comes back in, Paul. I mean, do you look at the system that we're deploying? Is that getting the best out of Sonny, or is it beyond that? Is it just the fact that we're watching Sonny that, bless him, is just struggling for a bit of form right now, and that coincides with the team really not having form? Is that what you put it down to more than the system not being a benefit to Sonny?
Yeah, I think he's an elite footballer, isn't he? But again, he's like every player, he thrives on confidence, being in a good environment. A winning side, or a team that are competing. I mean, he must be so demoralising for him every season. It's virtually a different manager. It's virtually the new coaching staff. It's this new systems. It's this. There's always unrest within the fan base, not because of him, but because of the stuff that's going off the field. So, and he's given everything to Spurs. I mean, he's given his career to Tottenham, his whole, his peak years. And I think, to be honest, even if he is not the player he was, I think he deserves to retire at Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I hate the way that I speak about Sonny. Maybe some of his performances this season, just because as you said, he's given us so much over those 9 years, and I think what you said about maybe that theory about he must be fuming at the situation where the club have really kind of disrespected him, maybe wasted his time, maybe wasted his time a little bit, wasted the best years of his career. So, for him mentally, it's just, having been there for 10 years, having had all that disappointment, that must play a big part as well. So,
and I don't think he's not a shouty type, is he? He's not a natural leader. So, the captaincy is all well and good. But realistically, I mean, he shouldn't be the captain in the sense of sort of, like, say, a midfield general or something. That's not his character, is it? He's a very placid guy. So for him to be pissed, you'd have to think that something was seriously wrong. But that's the way it comes across to me. It's just a theory. I'm not saying that's actually happening, but I just wonder why all of a sudden it just went completely dead silent on his contract, and then they just fed out. Oh yeah, we'll be triggering the extension. Maybe they'll come to their senses, and maybe they'll come up with a 3-year deal, which would be worthy, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, just again, bring it back to injuries. We saw on the weekend, Destiny Udogie, another player going off injured. There was reports today suggesting he was due to be assessed. Obviously, it looks like maybe another hamstring injury. But look, obviously, I think he's had several injuries already. But he's not the only one. I mean, my goodness me, we can look at the list here of Vicario, Romero, Van der Ben, Ben Davis. Obviously, Udogie added to that. Odebear, Richarlison, Mikey Moore. Such a ridiculous list of injuries. I know, obviously, people are looking for who's to maybe blame for it. Do you think, who do you think might be to kind of at fault here for the injuries? Is it a case of maybe Ange's tactics? Is it a lack of, squad planning? Having been let, it's just, I find it ridiculous that we went into the season with pretty much Udogie as our only left back. That for me is probably the biggest frustration. I certainly accept that Ange's system is obviously incredibly high demanding for players, but when Udogie is your only left back, when you've got Porro, obviously maybe Spence was there, but you've obviously the drop off in quality in centre backs. Do you think what do you kind of put maybe these injuries down to? Is it Ange's tactics? Is it poor squad planning? Obviously, lots of people like to blame our medical department as well. So, what do you kind of put all the injuries down to?
I think it's probably a combination of all of that, to be honest. I think the poor squad planning. I mean, it's very obvious that Ange doesn't fancy Reguilon. It's not wasn't just him. He fell out under previous regime as well. So for the club's inability to move him on, even if it cost them some money, that's really poor, and to not getting an adequate replacement. And now, of course, they're having to do a bit of a climb down and include him in squads and even get him on as a sub, and they don't want him at the football club, which, for him, it's not good for his career, obviously, but it was perfectly obvious they didn't want him 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So, yeah, again, they failed to sort of address a really key issue. And if you've still got these people, the players that know they're not part of the future of the club, hanging around and having to stand in. I mean, why would Reg give a shit if he gets subbed on for 5 minutes against Man United? Well, don't matter to him, does it? He put out a thing, then he said, "Mum, I played a game of football" or something. Yeah, he's taking the piss because they took the piss to a certain extent. They should have just got rid of him, paid him off, done whatever it takes to get rid of him, and get someone else in. But again, that's the squad negligence. I know they're pissed with the training, with the medical staff. I think everyone is, because there was supposed to be some sort of revamp and sort of overhaul and sort of study into what they were actually doing. And I think there's some sort of internal politics going on there between the sort of the coaching staff and the medical side of it. They're not always aligned by the sounds of it. So there's a little bit.
That can't be great for camp, is it? I mean, it's interesting you say that, Paul, because we saw actually in the back of the game against Wolves and his presser with Radu, where he's saying, again, we acknowledge he's half fit, but he's going to play. I mean,
yeah. That was a little bit naughty, that, because he has got Alfie Dorrington sat there, and for Alfie's sort of confidence and sort of.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean,
he was sat on the bench, so whether that's just a pure oversight in the sense of Andrew's just trying to overemphasise. Look, what we're supposed to do, rather than I haven't got anybody, because he has got somebody. He's got Alfie, but obviously Alfie's not had any first team minutes. He's not really sort of had men's football, if you like, so he's very inexperienced. So I guess at that time Andrew was just frustrated, saying, what do you want me to do? Sort of pull a rabbit out my arse, sort of thing. So yeah, but the whole, like I say, it all goes back to the sheer neglect of not focusing on the actual football team and the strength of the squad going into a season with 23 players.
Yep.
And with positions that didn't have deputies. I mean, the basics of any football squad, if you was to write one down, say, Rick, you formulate a squad of, say, 24, 25 players, you're going to have 3 goalkeepers.
Yep.
You have 2 right backs, 2 left backs. This is like schoolboy stuff, isn't it? And Spurs end up with 9 wingers and fucking 1 left back, So it's just...
Only Tottenham.
Well, who's and you've not only got the manager, but you've got a director of football, you've got a head of football operations. I mean, God knows what he does apart from have a fancy title. But you've got all these people that can't come up with a left-sided defender in the last 4 or 5 years, which to me is mind-blowing. I mean, it's just basics. What are they doing?
Can I ask you, Paul, you mentioned these points, which I think is really important that you're saying this, and it again ties into the fact we were lucky enough to have you on during the summer transfer window, where Ange was asked that question on a majority of occasions. Is he happy with the business being done? Is he signing off on all these players? And his answer is yes, these are the players that I'm signing off on. These are the players that I want. And look, let's be honest about it. You've been around football for a very, very long time.
Of course.
As the manager, if you're not saying yes, I'm signing off on these players, you're not going to be in a job, are you? So, I mean, the reality is now, looking back at the reflection of, the previous window, I'm really intrigued to know from what you think is an opinion piece that did Ange Postecoglou really get the players that he ultimately wanted? And number 2, did he maybe underestimate the sheer volume of games that there was to come and the need for his way of playing? We would need to adapt more with the squad in general. Forget the tactics for a second, but in terms of the overall numbers that we've got, has he maybe underestimated that, and should he have not been as blasé to say, look, I've got the players that I wanted? I mean, what's your take on it for you now as we look? And again, it's hindsight to say this 6 months on, but what do you think? What do you think about those points?
Yeah, I mean, the whole summer they were like, oh, we've got these players ready to go. We've got this player coming in. We've got, really building it up, and they managed to cock up virtually every deal. and then end up scrambling around. I mean, obviously you don't need to. Everyone knows the names that were linked in the summer, and they were heavily hinting that that they were going to get them in early and they were going to get the business done. And now was the time to sort. They'd had at the time Ange's first season, so they were well set now. They knew what they needed, and they basically, between all of them, and Ange has to take some responsibilities because ultimately he's the manager, and they've ended up just woefully short. So like I say, you've got this massive team of data scouts and a head of football operations, a chief scout, a head of this, head of that. And like I say, they left themselves woefully short. I mean, how anyone thought that they could go into the season of 55, 60 games with that number of personnel, having let a number of homegrown and even club-trained players go as well. And then having to scramble around, is it going to be Forster or Spence in our Europa League squad? I mean, come on, guys. This is the 8th richest club in the world. You're running it like a Sunday League team. I mean, come on. It's just stuff like that. I mean, this is the Premier League. You got managers at National League that know, for them, with no budget, that they need 25 players for a season. Maybe an overturn of 30, 35 players. So, there's a lot of they need to be looking in the mirror. And, it's Groundhog Day. We're back here again, and all the false promises in the summer and all that sort of stuff. And it's hard to be infused by it. So as we go into a window, yes, they want this position. I mean, all that tells you is that they need virtually every position on the bloody pitch, because you cocked up so much. This doesn't look good for you. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to that. It's not a good look. They think it's a good look. We're going to do this to strengthen. You're in this position because you fucked it up. And it's years of neglect. It's not just this season. It's not all on Ange. If someone says to you, Ricky, if you're manager of Tottenham, I can give you Dominic Solanke, or there's the kid who plays in Uzbekistan, right? Who scored 18 goals this season, right? Or there's a guy at Chelsea who can't get in the first team, but we can get him on loan for you. I mean, what you're going to say? Yeah, well, Dominic's my man, isn't he? Of course he is, and he's not going to walk into the dressing room or come on to media reports. Yeah. First week of the season and go, well, fucking, that was a pile of shit. That's out my window. What am I supposed to do now? Because he's got a group that he's got to manage. He's got to motivate the group and keep them on side, of course. Because people want him to come out and say those things. Of course they do. Yeah, and to be fair to him, he fronts everything up. He's not hiding. He doesn't hide.
No, I mean that's the one thing. I'd probably be most critical of. He takes responsibility for everything, Paul. Everything. I mean, listen. I know people don't like the fact Conte Mourinho. The thing is, Conte Mourinho would always push back. I mean, the thing with Ange is, I think people like the fact that he does take a lot of responsibility for everything. But I think that's
it's also quite clever because in that way, he is looking for everyone to find the problem themselves. So we're now more focused on the board than ever before. So he's had that influence already, in the sense of, I don't think you've ever had the Tottenham fan base you've never had ENIC as unpopular as they are now.
That's fair, and that's true.
Under any manager, they're the most unpopular they've ever been under Ange Postecoglou. So in a way,
does that resonate though, Paul? Do they get that? Do they understand that? Do you think they understand that?
They think they're doing a fantastic job.
And off the pitch,
and we should be grateful, basically, because before they came along, we were nothing. That's sort of the attitude that comes across to me from people that I know that have dealt with them and still deal with them. That they feel that. Well, you've got this beautiful stadium. We're competing in the top league in Europe, where
entertaining football.
I mean, Daniel must regret saying that at that fans forum, mustn't he? We got our Tottenham back because.
Oh my God!
Since then, it's sort of just turned to.
Well, in a way, I mean, when they leave us, if they do leave us, like you say, we're back to mid-table. Here we go. We've got our Tottenham back.
Ultimately,
unbelievable.
Their tenure could end up 24, 25 years of basically reaching a Champions League final, having a sort of 5-year honeymoon period under Poch where things just fell into place. And he wasn't even Daniel's first choice; he was third choice.
Well,
so
this
again,
is another thing, isn't it? Yeah,
this
how
is
many have
where
we stumbled upon to get to the man that really shouldn't have been the man?
And this is where the element of luck comes into it, because, like I say, they got lucky with that Sky boomed into football, and all of a sudden the stratosphere just changed as to what you could be capable of in football clubs. You know, all of a sudden, this is unbelievable. And yes, they've got to semis, they've got to finals, and managers have made poor decisions, and players have made poor decisions, and we haven't turned up. So there has to be a bit of responsibility there. But overall, ironically, they could end up leaving us in the same position apart from a stadium that they found us in, which is just bizarre.
I agree. Jay, we're going to steer the show over to you. Like I say, still got quite a lot to cover as we enter this preview of the January transfer window. Jay, let's hand back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit ridiculous asking this question because it's going to be on how quickly we expect business to get done. Obviously, we know at Spurs always feels very slow. I mean, I won't forget kind of the how long it took for us to get Pedro Porro through the door. I think we knew we wanted him. I mean, I remember reports coming out of Portugal, early December, and then obviously we end up January 31st, I think it was, when we eventually got him through the door. But we looked at that fixture list in January. There has to be players coming in almost 1st of January. We need players for that Newcastle game straight away. Are you kind of expecting things to maybe happen fairly quickly at Spurs, or is it just going to be the case of, it's going to be Spurs and they're going to take their time with these deals? How do you think it's going to play out? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tottenham, so we never sort of, you have to temper any expectations all the time, don't you? I mean, they talk a good game, they always do. They're feeding lines to agents that they want players through the door as soon as possible, literally before Newcastle. But we hear it so often that we sort of starting to get sort of tone deaf to it. That I know for a fact, because I've spoken to 3 people at agencies today that are sort of on the case, if you like, but they could do all the work they like and present the player to Spurs ready to go, and then Spurs manage to somehow cock it up. They change terms and all the rest of it. So how long is a piece of string? The good thing about it is that the window does shut after a month, so we don't have this sort of elongated 12-week summer window to deal with. We just have to put up with the rubbish for about a month. But they want, as it was described to me, bodies in as soon as possible. And by bodies, they're sort of multiple. The quality of those bodies, I think, is anyone's guess. But don't be expecting Tottenham to be throwing around £70 million bids, because that is not going to happen. That's guaranteed. That's the only sure thing about this window.
Joe, we'll just unmute you from our end, bud. We just need to unmute you.
Sorry, that's my fault. Sorry, I got too excited. I tried to jump the gun there. I mean, we saw it last window where we brought in Radu Dragozin and Timo Werner. How on earth Timo Werner is still at the football club? But it's just that's where again it's reactive, and then it leaves us in a position where we can't bring in more players because we've got Timo Werner taking up wages, we've got Dragozin taking up wages, and this is just a result of why being reactive can be such a big mistake. And and you mentioned about just getting in bodies there is that for me is a big worry, because I just don't want us to end up with more players like those 2 that I've just mentioned, and we're just filling up the squad. I mean, Dragozin, obviously, I don't know. I've seen some good signs.
Early days.
Somewhat. I mean, we've seen some good signs. I don't want to be overly critical of him, but obviously Timo Werner is the real one. Just to bring it on to maybe someone who might have some sort of influence in Spurs' transfer windows, Fabio Paratici. Obviously, I think he was at the game on the weekend, and I'm sure he goes to several games. Obviously, seems to be talk that he was in a consultancy role. Feels like he'd have some sort of an influence over some of the transfers under Postecoglou. Do we know that he's still kind of having an influence at Spurs, and might we see some sort of an influence this January?
Yeah. He'll be putting players to Daniel, because him and Daniel are close. So he'll be putting players, and basically what happens with all clubs is the manager will identify a position, and then they'll come up with a list of names and put them to the manager. So this is where the manager didn't want this player. he's presented with a list of, like I said earlier, 3-4 names. And if they're the players that are attainable, then he's going to go through that and see if he might not pick any. But ultimately, if he needs bodies through the door, then he's going to pick someone. So, that's why you do end up with your sort of Timo Werner's on loan and things like that. So, I think the loan market in January anyway is going to be the most popular in the Premier League, because you can have 6 now on.
Oh wow!
Teams can have a maximum of 6 from abroad, I think it is, or 6 in total. You can have 6. You can have 6 on loan, but only 2 from the same association. So you can have 4 from abroad. So I think that they'll look at the loan market. They'll probably look. Ironically, they will try and send players out. I think they might try and loan if they can do stuff that's going to say, for example, move one of our young goalkeepers out. If we can get a goalkeeper in.
We are going to get Paul back. Don't worry, everybody. We're going to get Paul back. We might have lost Paul there for a second. Obviously, Paul reflecting on the fact that, just to be very, very clear where we are in our goalkeeping situation. Obviously, as we know at the moment, Fraser Forster is currently deputising for Vicario. And I know, again, there'll be wide debates out there about Spurs' goalkeeping situation right now, and whether there's been an element of the fact that we should have had more of a prepared number 2. Look, I think the fact of the matter is, I think we can all agree that Fraser Forster has performed very, very capable, I think, in the absence of Vicario, given the fact of the way Spurs want to play in the adoption of the football Ange Postecoglou wants. There's no doubt about it that, the way and the brand of the way Tottenham want to move forward now. I think the key thing will be, Jay, is that any goalkeeper Spurs looking to bring in has pretty much got to fit that remit, hasn't it, in terms of, carrying on the philosophy of being able to play out from the back, because I think that's been one of the things that we would just say since Fraser has come in, that you arguably say there's been an element of struggling with. He's been, I think, a tremendous shot stopper so far in terms of the games that he's played in, but I think the element of being capable and able with your feet and the way Spurs are bringing the ball out from the back has been fundamental. And I think what's been very, very clear is that Ange does not want the goalkeepers to hoof the ball. He wants them to play out from the back. And I think, again, I'm sure you'll agree, Jay, when it comes to looking at a goalkeeper, we're going to have to, if we bring somebody in, fit that profile or model. Is that fair to say?
Well, I just think, again, it comes down to poor squad planning. I mean, look, Forster, obviously, I think he has got a reputation for being a good shot stopper, and at times he has shown that. I do urge people maybe to go and have a look at the equaliser on the weekend against Wolves. It was my goodness me, I didn't quite realise quite how poor it is. He almost just, anything that's not quite at him, he struggles to kind of stop going in. And it was an awful. I watched that goal back. It was awful. And then obviously inability to play it with his feet is a real concern. We just shouldn't be in this situation where we've got a 36-year-old goalkeeper who'd played next to no football. Obviously, it's always very difficult for a second goalkeeper to come in anyway. But, it's just shocking the situation we find ourselves in. I mean, obviously, Arsenal have got the similar situation where Neto's not playing a great deal of football, but he is an experienced goalkeeper. He's still at a suitable level, and if something was to happen to Raya, they'll be well covered. And again, we just left ourselves short in that area. And look, the step down is huge. I mean, we've got the record here. He's conceded 24 goals in 30 matches. That is really shocking. And yes, obviously the players in front of him aren't quite good enough. They're Fraser Forster, but I think it just, we can all go on about his shot stopping, but I just don't think he's quite been good enough. And I just think that step down in quality is another reason why we find ourselves in such a shocking position. And, when you've got a manager who wants his keeper to play out from the back, and then you see him trying to play out from the back against Manchester United, and how he struggled with that, it just goes to show that, this club are always about doing kind of the bare minimum. And I am frustrated with that goalkeeper situation.
Yeah, no, I think, as I say, it's no doubt. I know you're going to come back up and ask Paul the fact around the signings that have been made during Paratici and Langer's time at the club. We're going to bring Paul back in. Paul, if possible, if you can't do it, not a problem at all. If you're able to rotate the camera just so we can see you, that'll be great. We've kind of got you half size. We are going to get Paul. There's a demand for Paul in full HD. We're working on it. We're going to get Paul back in full HD if we can get him to rotate the camera. We'll work on that.
Reason, I got I got
There we
locked
go,
out
perfect.
for some reason. I don't know. They probably maybe Daniel got hold of my internet. So I
Just being reactive again.
Yeah, I've now gone onto the iPhone. So
I mean, that was the argument I told the wife when we needed the upgrade internet from my end. So maybe Paul, we're thinking on the likes there. I'll hand back to Jay because I know Jay's got some questions to ask you around, as you've touched upon, our technical operations. Jay, I'll hand back over to you.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the guy that came in to replace him, as we were speaking out, Fabio Paratici, was Johan Lange. Obviously, on social media, there has been quite a lot of criticism towards him. I mean, I think in the summer I was relatively pleased with what we did, just in terms of, I thought we brought in some really good young players for the future. But look, we've obviously found ourselves in a situation now where it's very clear we left ourselves very short. And, Bergvall, as great as he might be in the future, he's just not really a viable option. And it's the same for many of those players. Obviously, Archie Gray's done a fantastic job, but, the fact that he's having to play centre-back is ridiculous. So, I read through some of the other players that maybe he's brought in. Obviously, Odebear was another one. Dominic Solanke, Radu Dragazin, Timo Werner, Bergvall, as we mentioned, and Gray, obviously all coming in under his stewardship. Do you kind of think that the criticism of Lange has been somewhat fair, or do you think maybe he's not had quite enough time to really have an impact on building this squad?
No, I mean, I think those young players are absolutely fine. Absolutely fine if you're adding around there some experience, and if you're adding that left-sided defender, if you're adding that defensive or centre midfielder, if you're adding that elite winger, then that's absolutely fine. No one cares if your bench is full of kids and full of prospects, because that's how you bring them through. I mean, that's just the natural progression, isn't it? You have your established players and you have your backups as sort of majority of them are younger players, which is absolutely fine. But now we're in a position where we're asking these kids to come in and perform, and Lucas has been playing in the Swedish league, and you're asking him to step into Premier League football and be ready for it. And with Wilson, obviously he's had a bad injury, and that doesn't look good on that basis, which is a shame for him. So we'll never really be able to sort of give a proper evaluation on him at the moment. When he did play, he looked decent. So and he's got a bit more experience of sort of English league football. And Archie as well has obviously been pushed from sort of pillar to post and played too much football. So just woefully short on the experience side. I think Ange even sort of admitted recently in a press conference that we should probably be sort of aiming towards the more experienced end now. Whether that comes to fruition, or all these young boys are absolutely fine. No one has a problem with that. But expecting too much of them, and then because not every one of them will work out, and that's that's just pure percentages. You can buy 10, 18-year-old kids and maybe 2 or 3 will make it. That's because life in the Premier League is bloody hard. It's difficult, and you can end up sort of ruining someone's career at the same time. I think that whether they admit it or not, that they made mistakes in the summer, definitely. And it's not enough. It's not been good enough. No.
It's interesting, Paul. You mentioned about Ange, and I totally agree with you, and there's no doubt about it. Look, he has been actually fairly vocal in the more recent presses about the fact, he mentioned he hopes he's been good for Santa this year, and he wants obviously signing to come through the door. He's been very vocal again around the fact that as much as it's been great bringing young players in, there needs to be an element of experience there to be able to help the squad and get through some of the more difficult games. And I think that's where definitely that, and as you're aware as Paul, we know the games that Spurs have, I use that term, give up, again, to be 2-0 away to Brighton, to be 2-0 at home to Chelsea, and to not see these games out. The squad is lacking experience. And I would say that even some of the players that we've got as the captains at the club at the moment, again, this is not to be personal or to dig out players. I don't know if it's right to say these are captains. I mean, look, they may be leaders by example on the field and the way they play. But again, I would argue, I don't like the way I've seen James Maddison at certain times sulking. I don't like that. Again, these are players that sometimes are playing for themselves. I look at someone like Romero, who I think he looks like his head's been in Madrid really since the start of the season. And I might be wrong. I mean, I just think it was pure negligence, really, in that moment where he came back for that Chelsea game. And many will have different views about Ange fielding these players, but to do a Cruyff turn, which then leads him coming off the field, I just can't understand and legislate for that moment. And again, with Sonny's forming different and where it is, and like you said, maybe there's a political thing around the contract. my worry is that the leaders that we've got at this football club,
Mm.
I am desperately worried for these coming weeks where we've got
Yeah.
big games at this football club where you need people to step up and be able to really take games by the scruff of the neck. And I'll say this before, that when we've got difficult periods in difficult games where we do go, and again, for balance, we did come back against Wolves. Bentancur, to be fair, has been one of the players that has shown a bit of leadership, definitely in his time at Spurs. We need to see more of that. And I think, any players that we bring in this window, I know you've mentioned the word bodies there, Paul. That word bodies worries me because I think we need a few leaders in there. We need a few players that are going to really come in and take the game by the scruff of the neck and see us through. I mean, one player that you'll be acutely aware, you've already spoke about, and that has been linked so far this window, has been Jack Grealish. And you know what? We're days away from the window opening. I think many are acutely aware to attract or to bring something like Grealish. Spurs will probably have to smash their wage structure to be able to do that. I mean, I'm not asking you to kill off any hopes of this one, Paul, or maybe I am. And in any remote world of being a Spurs fan, can you see any way Jack Grealish ends the January transfer window as a Tottenham player?
No, purely because, like I said previously, it's a salary issue. I just cannot see Tottenham doing that. I just do not, and I don't see the benefit really for Manchester City either. So I think we should just try and knock that one on the head really early, to be honest, because I just don't see that happening under any circumstances. And Man City aren't going to come to Daniel Levy and go, "Oh yeah, by the way, you can take Jack, and we'll only take 50 grand a week towards his wages or something like that." It's just not going to happen. Reportedly, someone said he's on like £300,000 a week or something. Crazy numbers, and is he a leader anyway? Is he someone that's going to come in and will he start games? Where does he fit in this? Is he the overriding priority to get in someone like Jack? As good as he is, I don't think that's we're conceding four goals a game, so I think the priorities are elsewhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you personally reported from your side that Spurs are looking at a goalkeeper, a centre back, a centre forward, and winger positions. I mean, like you said, it's almost like it's like a squad. It's almost like, it's a squad.
And tonight, before coming on here on conversation, someone messaged me saying, "Oh, don't forget the left back and centre mid." So,
so we're looking for.
It's just basically you might as well just say that. Yeah, you just might as well say that
we're looking
for a whole team. The centre forward one, I think, is a bit of a red herring. I think that's probably wrong, to be honest, because I think Richie's coming back, and I can just see Daniel next week saying, "Yeah, but Ange, you've got two centre backs coming back. You've got Richie coming back. You've got Werner available now. You've got Rodrigo available now. We've got players coming back. You've got Ben Davies coming back. I could just see it.
If you don't laugh, you cry. If you don't laugh, you cry.
But so basically they've near enough. Oh, sorry, Christina. I'm in the bad books now. But unless listen, if Man City directors fancy a go on the go-kart track, and if they fancy a go on the skywalk, then you never know. You never know. We could give them like a season pass or something like they do at Fort Park, and they can come whenever they want. But no, in all seriousness, I don't see Jack and I don't see Marcus Rashford ending up at Tottenham. So I think we can put them to the side.
Do you think, Paul? I mean, Jamie might have some names for you, but do you think you touched upon this earlier that opportunity of maybe going down that loan option, the obligation to buy route? Do you think that will be a favourable advantage? Because I mean, one of the things that perhaps he did do a few windows ago, as we remember under Conte, he pulled out Kulusevski and Bentancur. I mean, if ever we needed a window like that, I mean, is that something we could do? I mean, I suppose it's luck as well, isn't it? It's getting those players available to want to come here.
If he can find us a keeper by Saturday, that would be much appreciated, because we've got a wardrobe in goal at the moment. I mean, I honestly think I can move as quick as him. I mean, I'm sorry. He's a professional footballer, and I'm just some layabout who talks on Twitter. But really, 8th richest club in the world.
Well, I mean, we finished that game, Paul. We finished that game with Reguilon and Werner on the left-hand side.
The second goal against, what was he doing with that second on? I mean, it's more flappy than Big Bird. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And the kick that he done when he conceded those two against United, and they had a shot from like 35, 40 yards straight in the middle of goal, like you do at the old school playground, and he just wellied it up. The poor guy's head is gone, hasn't it? I mean, let's be honest.
I think Spurs have broken him the same way we break a lot of players.
The guy's he never signed up for this. He didn't sign up at his age to be playing every week. He was just like a training cone. And we've sort of thrust him into the sort of the spotlight. And I think he's conceded nearly 25 goals since Vic's been out. I mean, it's just not fair on the bloke, is it? I mean, it's just they have to sort out a goalkeeper for me anyway, because we can't. The problem is, of course, is that he's fundamental, the goalkeeper, to how you play, because you're playing out from the back. Now, admittedly, the way we were playing out against United wasn't the problem. It was just him with two absolutely catastrophic errors. But he has got to instill that confidence in those players, hasn't he, in that back four?
Of course.
And to be fair to him, it's a back four that's changing nearly every week. So he's not even familiar with sort of a pattern of play. So that we desperately need to address that back five. If we did nothing else in the window but got reinforcements in defence, I think that's a massive improvement, personally.
I mean, look, I'll hand back over to Jay. There's some names being thrown around already, Paul. So I'll hand back over to Jay. Our transfer window guru, Jay, I'll throw it over to you.
Well, funny you mentioned midfielder, actually, because I've put some names. Obviously, the obvious one will be Johnny Cardoso at Real Betis. I think back in the summer, we seemingly agreed a deal to potentially buy. Obviously, the strangest transfer I've ever seen. Agreed a deal for next summer to potentially buy him for £21 million. Talk that we went and we went to watch him in action for Real Betis against Vallecano, obviously in the Spanish league. Do you think there's any potential that deal might be brought forward at all, or is that one that they might just wait for the summer? And obviously the other name was Victor Roque. I think he was linked before he joined Barcelona as well, and obviously he's gone to Real Betis, so that deal has not gone very well there for him. But are those two names that we might see come up in January at all?
I mean, I think you're going to see them come up purely because of sort of we're in a stage now where your neighbour's dog will be linked with Tottenham, to be honest with you. But this Johnny Cardoso, I mean, he sounds like a cartoon character, doesn't he? I don't know.
I thought he sounded like a gangster. I mean, crackers, you asked on it, Johnny Cardoso. I
just don't understand the metrics of that deal in the first place. Does it even exist? It's just bizarre. No one seems to have reported on it. They come up with this thing that they've got an option to buy him potentially next summer. I mean, what does that even mean? Does that mean anything in real terms? I mean, potentially you've got an option to buy anyone, haven't you? So I'm not sure of the strength of that. So I've never bothered chasing that one, to be honest with you. I read today something about that Roque's had 2 loans or something, so he can't move again. Is that right? I'm not sure, to be honest.
I know you're going on those lines. I mean, I think from what I understand, his situation at the moment is he would be permitted and would be allowed to join a further club in the upcoming window. Hence the links to Tottenham. But Paul, listen,
Barca need to sell, don't they, as well? Obviously, Barca in a shocking situation financially as well.
Yeah. I mean, what I do laugh about, Paul, I hope you won't mind me saying this, that when I'm seeing Milan Skriniar being linked with Tottenham.
Yeah.
This, and again, we were saying this is an Ange Postecoglou signing. I mean, this guy's been linked with us since the days of Mourinho. Yeah, and here we are 3 managers later, and he's still being linked with Tottenham Skriniar. I mean,
it's incredible, isn't it? It's just
mad.
It's either incredibly Tottenham or it's incredibly lazy. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And either could be true, couldn't they? But he's not someone that I've heard. Not that there's many names bandied about that are sort of kept out of the public domain at the moment. There's a few, but there's nothing of any sort of real strength that you could put your name to it and go for it. There are, like I said, there are names around, but I don't think that there's anything that sort of you could lay your hat on.
One thing to ask you, Paul, before we look for the close on this show. One player that we do know is part of Spurs' long-term plans, and a player that is going to be coming and hopefully featuring in these next coming weeks and months, and please God, years to come, if he's successful to do so, is that of Heung-Min Son. He has been obviously pictured already in the stands at Spurs. He was there for the Wolves game. I mean, God, I don't want to terrify him already from what he's seeing at the moment. But, the poor bloke, we've got to get him on the pitch first. I mean, what do you feel at the moment when it comes to the element of him having game time at Spurs and when that may be? Because I think it's fair to say we've touched upon this fact already, Paul, that when you're looking at January's fixtures, there is some massive fixtures for the football club there that won't be for the faint-hearted, and for a guy that, with all again respect given to him, coming from a completely different league, completely different culture, will need time to bed in. Can you see this player having an immediate, impact on Tottenham, or do you expect him to be slowly bedded in? What's your view on where Min-hyuk will come into play?
Well, he might not have time to get bedded in. He might just get thrown in, and I can see Ange doing that, to be fair. Because there's just such limited options at the moment. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was thrown straight into the first team, obviously, and maybe the bench for a game and a little cameo or something. But I think that there's a high chance he'll be involved because they're probably going to let us down in the market. So we'll be forced into that that scenario. But you never know, he could come in and catch fire, couldn't he? So apparently he's very highly rated. I can't pretend to be, very clued up on him, but from people I've spoken to briefly about him, they're very very positive on what sort of impact he can have, and Spurs need that bit of pace down that channel. So it'd be interesting to see, but I can't really add too much to the sort of debate on him really. But I would imagine he'll be getting straight involved.
Another player who potentially could come straight in, and I mean, we could well need him. I don't know what the latest is with Radu Dragusin, but obviously Ashley Phillips. There was, I think it was the Evening Standard that said that we had an option as of the first, or early January to bring him back from Stoke. Do you think that's a possibility at all?
Yeah, my opinion is Ange doesn't particularly rate him, so I don't think he'll be recalled.
Got to be careful here, Paul. We're not giving really Dorrington a go. I mean, if we go down as
Well, he was pushed out, and only from what I heard that they felt he wasn't sort of ready for this level at the current time, and there was sort of some concerns from various people. So I don't know for a fact, but I'm not sure whether he's rated by the manager. So I think it would be quite telling. They're not going to recall him in week sort of 3 or 4, are they? If they're going to recall him, they're going to recall him in the first sort of immediately. So I think you can say if by this time next week sort of he hasn't been recalled, then you've got your answer, to be honest. But and the fact that they're pushing out that they're looking for a centre back in the market would also suggest. But again, it would be a case of, that the boys out there getting experience. He can come back a lot better player, like the likes of Kane did back for those years.
You know what's funny though, Paul? I mean, I might be wrong here. I think, and Jay might qualify this as well, I think he's getting absolute rave reviews on loan at Stoke. They're really impressed with him.
But it's Stoke, isn't it?
It is Stoke. It is Stoke.
They play with snow on the football. So if you're good in the air and you don't have to move a lot, then you're going to be all right at Stoke, aren't you?
I'm just thinking, Paul, in the second half of the season, we might have a battle on our hands here. We might need that kind of player.
We'll end up playing Stoke, won't we?
We'll go full on Arteta. That's what is going to happen.
He'll score the winner because we won the cause.
I tell you, Jay, we're going to hand back to you. Then we are going to seek a close on this show. Jay, let's hand back to you because, like I say, interesting conversations here. Jay, let me hand back to you.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit more on the goalkeeper situation. I mean, you made it obviously very clear that you think that another one needs to come in. I mean, it'd be interesting to kind of know what type of goalkeeper you think needs to come in, whether it needs to be someone that maybe can cover for Vicario until he's back. So maybe a short-term options. I don't know whether that'll be like a loan or something, or whether Spurs actually be a bit proactive and go and sign as someone who can challenge Vicario long-term. I don't know whether you kind of have any opinions on what kind of goalkeeper Spurs should go for.
Well, in the summer, they come very close to getting a goalkeeper in, but they couldn't get another one out on loan, so they couldn't do the deal. So that sort of collapsed. So the goalkeeper has always been on the horizon because they know that Forster's going to obviously eventually depart, and that'll be in the summer. So the goalkeeper situation is they desperately need one. It's sort of been propelled forward a bit, and I know that they're looking at one in Germany. So whether that can be done as a loan, I'm not. Or as a permanent, I'm not sure. But they're definitely looking at the goalkeeper area. And they will need...
Just to be clear, Paul, this is a view with the goalkeeper coming in to immediately feature? Yeah,
this window, yeah. They would like to do it for this window. But they've also got their eye beyond this window because of the situation with Forster. So they need to bring in someone that's capable of pushing Vicario and obviously, is good enough quality to be able to step in. So,
You suggesting that we're pre-planning, Paul?
well, no, I think like I said, the goalkeeper was due this summer, gone, but they messed it
Yeah.
up. So it's been sort of shelved till next summer. But because of what's happened now, they're bringing it to sort of January. So yeah, it's well organised chaos.
Absolutely.
It's
It made me laugh
fine.
though when everyone keeps saying,
We'll end
it's
up with no goalkeeper signing. So,
the thing that's also making me laugh is everyone keeps saying, it's business as usual at Tottenham. I mean, God, what is business as usual anymore at Spurs? I mean, what is business as usual anymore?
Unorganised chaos normally.
Honestly.
So yeah, the goalkeeper's always been on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's just a question, and I know they looked at. There was a guy in Italy that they done a lot of sort of background work on,
right?
With a view to him coming this coming summer. But I think that's been shelved as well. So. Yeah, it's a bit messy, but the goalkeeper situation has to be addressed. They just can't get around that. But they need to obviously sort out loans for the other two lads, or at least one of them.
Yep, listen, it will be interesting. Like I say, we have had reports that Spurs have been scouting the likes of James Trafford, Anthony Patterson, Alex Romero. These are apparently goalkeepers they've looked at in recent weeks. And, again, there has been sensitive links to centre-backs. We've discussed, the likes of Borussia Mönchengladbach. There's been Abduke Kusanov as well that's been linked. But, at the end of the day, like I say, we're going to have to see how that does play out. In terms of the forwards, I've seen a few mentions in the comments with regards to Kolo Muani, a name that's been linked as well. Like I say, it'll be interesting, Paul, like you say, about how Spurs do perceive that centre forward option to be, with the fact they've got Richarlison. I say coming back, but you never know when Richarlison, if he's coming back, because when he comes back, he breaks down again. So, like you've just said there, we do need bodies, but I think my biggest worry is, and it kind of brings me to this kind of final point, that bodies are all being well, but what we do need is quality. We need quality players that are going to actually come in and directly impact us now. So, I will ask Jay the question first, and I'll end it with you, Paul. Jay, what do you think would, in your mind, be a successful window for Tottenham? And what does Jay's success look like for Spurs, given the start we've made domestically, in your opinion?
Oh my goodness me. Well, I think the goalkeeper situation has to be addressed, and I would personally like to see someone come in who can challenge Vicario long term. Again, I just think it was ridiculous that we went into this season with Fraser Forster as that backup option. The fact that he hadn't played for nearly 18 months was ridiculous. I think to have someone who obviously of his age and just someone who just hadn't played a lot of football, it was always asking for real difficulties. So a goalkeeper certainly needs to be brought in. I would like to see maybe one more, at least another defender brought in. I think that might have to be a central defender. I think that the situation we find ourselves in is ridiculous, where we're having to play Archie Gray as a central defender. Obviously, drag us in as well. And Paul mentioned it, where, we do want to play out from the back, but you've got someone who's consistently starting in Radu Dragazin, who I honestly have not seen too many centre-backs who are worse on the ball than him. So that needs to be addressed if we're going to have any sort of success under Ange. So certainly a central defender. And then I just think we need maybe one more attacker to come in, because, it's pretty much the same each week. We're seeing Johnson, Son and Solanke, and obviously, obviously Kulusevski rotating on the right-hand side. So certainly some sort of attacker needs to be brought in. So, yeah, there's sort of three or so there that obviously I know there's so much more that needs to be done. And, my goodness me, I could go on forever. And as we said, we can bring in a whole new squad. But those would probably be the three positions, if I was to get three, that I'd like to see us go for. And look, I think now, obviously, the only success is kind of the cup competitions now in terms of Spurs. That's really what I'm kind of, as much as obviously it's frustrating to see where we are in the Premier League, I want us to end that wait for a trophy. And, the Europa League, I was excited to be back in it just because it felt like it represented a good chance to go and win that competition. Whether we are in a position now to go and do that, I really kind of doubt that we're good enough. And again, Liverpool, as Paul said, it's going to be so tricky having them over two matches. Maybe they might let their eye off the ball a little bit in terms of games around there and maybe the rest players, and that might really be our only chance. But so those cup competitions, I just want us to take seriously, and we'll have to see. And again, it's just such a frustrating situation we find ourselves in, because it's like the same 11 being thrown out every 3 days, and it's just a draining situation at the moment. But we've seen that run of January. It has to come quick. We have to get these players in quite quickly. But I think as we've discussed on that show, I just don't see it happening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Jay, welcome back.
Oh man, that was blimey! I mean, my goodness, man, I was that.
We've made the last year up very quickly. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much, Paul. I'm being asked to ask you 2 questions.
Okay.
First one, are we going to learn anything new from the Daniel Levy Simon Jordan interview, which is going to be broadcasted, we understand, in the near future? I mean, what's your takeaway from that? I mean, there's different viewpoints on what people think about Simon Jordan. Some people like him, some people loathe him. Obviously, there's been suggestions he's very, very close with Daniel. I mean, are we going to get anything out of that interview that's going to, I'll ask you in your opinion, going to change your mind on him as the owner or chairman of this football club?
No, because it will be scripted, it will be edited, it'll have to be run by the club who are probably already doing it, and it'll have to be run by the club to go through every single question, and they'll say, take this out. Oh, we're not having that. We're not happy with this wording. You have to change that. That's what they do. They do that now. They do that with press articles, and they do that. So I can't see anything much than a Levy loving, really, because like you say, they're close buddies. So he's going to apparently say about how ambitious he is, and he's determined to win the trophy at Tottenham, and it's all going to be very good PR, I think. But yeah, there may be a couple of snippets, but I can't see it being a full and frank sort of Lions Den sort of interview where if they did it live and he couldn't wriggle out of situations, then fair enough. But I think it would be cut to pieces, to be honest with you.
And final one, Paul. Look, we're going to hopefully get you back during the month of January. Like I say, always a pleasure having you on here. I mean, it's
cool.
I'm not just saying this, Paul. It's unbelievable whenever you come on. I mean, look, people they implore and absolutely love you here. There's 7,000 of them that are here nearly till midnight watching you, in awe of you. I'm not sure they're in awe of me and Jay at times, but they're in awe of you, my man. I'll tell you that. They absolutely love you on here. And it dispels the myth that for those that are breaking, he's not Bill Nicholson, although he does have a Bill Nicholson double act on X. You know how much people do hang on your every word. I feel crazy asking you this, Paul, after how many years I've got to know you. I mean, it's crazy me even asking you this question. What can this window upcoming be a success for Spurs? And what now, in your mind, on that first question, and 2, constitutes success for Tottenham this season now, based on what we're seeing at the start of this season?
I mean, the window can always be successful. It's whatever they want to make it, isn't it? At the end of the day, if a club has ambitions and our fans, they just want to see intent, as far as I can see. They just want to see that the board are aligned with them at wanting to win trophies and showing that ambition to go and win trophies, right? So to go and, identify, we need a left back. Every man and his dog can tell you we need a left back or we need left back cover. So go out and buy a left back cover, and that's all the Spurs fans want. We just want I speak for myself, but I just want to see intent. I don't want to hear about the next concert and all that. As lovely as that is, that's great. There's no problem with that. They've got to earn commercial revenue. I get that, but we want to hear that they're more concentrated on the team achieving. They never come out and say, we want to win the Premier League. We want to win. Never. It's we want to be competitive. This will enable us to compete. No, what you're saying is we want to get top 4, get the cash, keep the tills ringing, and if we win something, that'd be great. Be the cherry on the top of the cake. But it has to be your number one priority. And I don't think, and it's not in their nature, because they're an investment company. So why would investment companies take risks? I mean, it just goes against high risk anyway. What it goes against is the whole sort of ethos of what they do. And they've been very successful with this model. It's earned them a lot of money. So why would they change it? So I just want the club to come out and go, do you know what? We did everything we could to strengthen in that window. We backed our manager, whoever that may be at the time, and we've come out of the window a better football team than when we went into it. And that's all you can hope for. And that surely has to be the ambition of any football club owner. Well, fans anyway, maybe not owners, because they see profit and loss and all the rest of it. And their bottom line is their bottom line. But yes, they can come out. They're supposed to do what they like. 8th richest club in the world. They're miles within this profit and sustainability rules. They can do whatever they want. ENIC have got unbridled funds and their own businesses that they could invest into Tottenham if they wanted to. It's all about the will. And the will's got to be there from the very top. And Tottenham have had the same board members for 20 odd years saying the same things. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Yes, Daniel, no, Daniel. And, you know, ultimately, what have they got to show for it?
I think what's very telling, Paul, as you said.
In terms of football, I'm talking
about football. I think, like you say, you know, they might leave a wonderful stadium, they might leave a wonderful training ground, but the reality is that we're in severe, you know, we're in severe danger of the fact that you said they walked into the club being a mid-table side, and dare I say, they could walk out with the club being in the same position and just a League Cup to show for it, which, you know, Daniel Levy didn't even want to list in his achievements.
Spurs fans are probably the least demanding, to be fair, because the shit they've been served for 20 odd years, and all we want, we'd be happy with a Carabao Cup, and that's true. Now there's other clubs, fans that would go, that's beneath us. You know, that we want better than that. But this is how sort of brainwashed we've been into believing that success is a shiny stadium and a nice training ground and nice training facilities. And it's not. Success for a football club is about putting trophies on the table and competing at the very, very highest level. And Spurs have the means to do that. And what pees people off, I think, is the fact that they have the means to do it and they choose not to. And there is a choice, ultimately.
It is. Paul,
sorry to depress you all.
that was my fault because I took you down that pathway. So please. But listen, I've got to say, I think for many out there that, you know, I got to just say this, many people love and hearing your insight in terms of the football club. And look, I think take the element or, you know, transfers out of it. I think what you speak is a real honesty for many out there that have become so disillusioned with the football club. And I can only speak for me being a lifelong fan that, you know, again, I will say this a lot. Tottenham wasn't, how do I put this, wasn't offered to me. I had no choice. It was instilled in me, like many out there. You know, my dad, bless his heart, you know, I do dearly love, but I do worry. I do worry. I do wonder whatever he did to make me a Tottenham fan. I think many of us would only agree the fact that, you know, this is, you know, I don't know many that actually get a choice these days. You know, the reality is that we grow with them at the point of, you know, being passed on through family, but it is a real test of character right now in terms of a fan base.
It's a marriage with no divorce option, isn't it?
No, can't get out. Can't get out. Cannot get out.
A football club. And like I say, we you know, we just want intent. We just want to see if we fail, fine, absolutely fine.
If we fail trying, Paul, and you know the line out there, I haven't got a problem with that.
It's when you know that they're capable of doing something and they don't, and you know, people fall on their swords because of them, their actions, you know, and you know, Teflon Dan gets away with it every single time. That's what stings, is the fact that, you know, if you can see intent and you can see a real sort of ambition to deliver not only infrastructure but trophies, then I think everyone's happy in them circumstances.
I totally agree. Look, I think on that basis, let's hope for a positive January transfer window. This is our final show, unless something is going to crazily happen, which cannot happen, but for the sake of all of our relationships and our marriages and our friendships out there of 2024, and how pivotal and how lovely it is that Paul and Jamie close this show for us. I want to say a massive thank you for another year of genuine love and support and hardship, and thanks to everybody that's featured on Last Word on Spurs. And Paul, listen, bless you, you've been on here a few times during this period. I know, again, everybody does hang on your every word. I can't thank you enough again because you don't, I will just say this, Paul, that you don't have to give out the information that you do on X. You know, you can keep that to yourself. You don't have to do that.
we're all fans, aren't we? We all
Yeah.
want the best for our football club. So if there's debate and there's stuff to be, that can sort of keep that community going and have good, sort of lively debates, as we say. Then,
well, I think many of us just do appreciate, Paul, that you do share us some of the insight behind behind the scenes or around the club, because I think like a lot of us here, we look at it and we don't know. We don't know. All we can gauge is through the lack of communication. It feels that we're very directionless at times, and therefore having somebody out there that is willing to give us something, if it's not even what we want to hear, is better than nothing. So I think on behalf of me, from the Spurs fan base, I think we say a massive thank you to you for, like I say, giving up your time, and let's see what this month brings us. But I think we all agree out there that there's a need for football to be first. If it ever comes back to that place, that'd be lovely. But I think, if it's not going to be first, then hand it over to people that will make it first, because this fan base deserve more than what we're getting right now for the product that we're having to pay to go and watch it. We deserve so much more. I want to say a massive thank you again. The wonderful Jeremy Brown at the Daily Hotspur, the superb Paul O Keefe. Look, that is the end for 2024. I want to say a massive thank you to over 8,000 of you that have given us your time, that have checked in and seen what is to come in this January transfer window upcoming. Don't be scared. Be optimistic. Be hopeful. We've got to be Spurs, and we've got to keep believing things are going to change. Again, thank you so much to our wonderful watching audience, to our viewers and listeners all around the world. We have been the last word on Spurs. Keep safe. Keep well. We'll be back with you soon. Hope not too soon. Happy New Year to you all. And as always,